What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over some mistakes that could be losing you games in Fortnite Chapter 4 Season 2. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below which of these mistakes you are making before seeing the video. Also, before we get into it, a lot of these tips or mistakes are going to focus mainly on things specific to this season. I do have videos like this I've made in the past, where I've gone over more like general mistakes when fighting or things that would apply all the time, that you might also be making those mistakes. Those videos will be linked down in the description below, but even if you just look up on YouTube like Evolve Jake mistakes, they will come up, and if you haven't seen those videos or you're new to zero build, they could be really helpful for you. The first mistake we're going to talk about is going to be not going to the vaults or the island. So the vaults spawn in at second zone. They're located brutal, Mega City, and Shattered Slabs. They're very good. This is where you get the Mythic Havoc Pump Shotgun, which can one pump in zero build. It is very, very, very good. And you also get the legendary Slurp Juice from here. And a lot of players tend to avoid these vaults because they're scared of fighting. And then same thing with the island. They're scared to go to the island to get the Mythic Pulse Rifle, which is very good, because they're worried about dying. And you often will have to fight people at these vaults or the island. And it is dangerous. But at the same time, if you don't go to the vault or the island, you're later just going to have to fight those same people, but they're going to have a mythic item, you know? So, like, sure, you might go to the vault and then fight the person and then lose trying to get it, but that's better than losing to them later on in the game because they got a mythic pump shotgun. Like, if you're going to have to fight that player, you might as well get it out of the way. And then the same thing is true with the pulse rifle on the island. Like, if you're going to fight those people, you're going to have to fight them either on the island or later on once they have the pulse rifle. I would rather fight them once they don't have the super overpowered mythic items. So not only do you get a very overpowered item by getting the vault or getting the island, but you deny other players having it. And oftentimes, from what I've found, this is where I fight the better players in the lobby, especially on the island. My games, typically, by the time I clear island and get the mythic pulse rifle, I've fought most of like the very good players in the lobby at that point, and then it's just like not very good players remaining. Typically, it's not always the case, but that's usually how it goes. So I would very much recommend going to the vaults or going to the island, getting these mythic items. Not only do you get great items, you stop other people from having them, and you're probably going to eliminate some of the better players in the lobby by doing so. When you are going for the vaults, though, a mistake some players make is they're not checking for rats hiding at the vaults. And this is very unfortunate, but whenever vaults are in Fortnite, there's always players that hide around them waiting for other players to open them. And this can get you killed if you let your guard down. I feel like it's pretty natural to, like, you know, you eliminate the boss, you get the key card, maybe you fought a player or two there, then you're on your way to the vault. You feel like everything is going well and it's fine. And then you die to some strange player hiding in a random location around the vault. So make sure you are being careful, you're on guard the entire time until you're out of there with the mythic items. The next thing, I think a lot of players are making this mistake in Chapter 4 Season 2, is going to be challenging snipers. So the heavy sniper is back and it can one hit to the head. So if you see sniper glint, this is something they added this season, where if somebody is scoping in with the heavy sniper, you'll see like basically it looks like a flashlight they're holding at you. You'll see this light, and that means they're aiming in with a sniper. So if somebody is holding the sniper out, it's not good to like repetitively peek into them and try to get damage. Sometimes what I'll do when someone's hard playing off a snipe like this, I'll kind of like jiggle peek, like go back and forth, or maybe like crouch peek and then immediately go back into cover, shoot a shot or two, and then immediately go back into cover. Like you kind of want to bait their shot out this way. But if you see somebody holding the sniper out and then you just hard peek and you're just, you know, shooting them in hopes to get the kill, like you're going to sit there and shoot at them until they die, odds are that it isn't going to work out well for you. So you don't want to challenge snipers. I know this can be tough, especially with how slow in-game plays, but challenging snipers is oftentimes a mistake unless you're doing something to bait out a shot, maybe. But even then, they might hit you while you go for that, and there is an augment that allows players to have 2 bullets in their heavy sniper. So if you're playing to like bait a shot out from them and then you think they're out when they have that augment, you can still get killed. So you have to be very careful when you see that sniper glint. The next mistake, this has been a thing I've talked about a bunch in zero build, is not getting opening tags before starting a close range fight. So if you just katana onto somebody when you have no damage on them and they have no damage on you, it's a pretty, not a coin flip fight, but it can be because of how hard these shotguns hit. Especially the Mythic Havoc pump can literally one pump you. So you want to be very careful before pushing somebody close range with how lethal the shotguns are right now. And that is why I think it is ideal to go into a close range fight with opening tags. If you already have somewhat of an HP advantage, it makes it a little bit easier for you to get that kill cleanly and hopefully get out of there without taking very much damage and not getting third partied, because that's another thing to consider. you're probably going to get third partied when you fight somebody. So you want to be able to end that fight as quickly and as cleanly as possible, and getting opening tags on somebody before pushing them with your shotgun, I think is super important. You do want to be very, very careful when chasing players this season though, especially when chasing them into right shoulder peaks, because of like I was just talking about with the shotguns. It doesn't matter how much damage you have on somebody. If you get into a close range fight, they can one pump you with the Mythic Havoc pump shotgun. And even the legendary one can hit for like 190 max. So while it isn't going to instantly delete you, you can die incredibly fast because of it. So you need to be very careful with these shotguns. Even if you have, like, let's say you red eye somebody and you hit them for like 180 damage, that's great and all, but you don't want to push into that fight lazily. You need to always be on your guard in close range fights this season, because this Havoc pump is very, very lethal. And like I said before, even if you don't get one pumped, the damage potential on it is so high that if the person gets a shot off, it can really leave you very vulnerable to third parties. The next mistake is pretty common for zero build, but especially this season, I feel like, and that is going to be forcing fights in-game. With the zone changes that happened this season, the in-games are very slow. They added several zones to the game and made it longer. I think it used to be 9 zones and now it's 12 zones. And as like a time perspective, my zero build matches used to take 18 minutes, and this season they're taking like 22 or 24. So they made the games much longer. It makes in-game much slower, but it also means you oftentimes have several people in a small zone. So I feel like with in-game, you want to play pretty reserved. That doesn't necessarily mean you just want to hide, but you want to play somewhat defensive and not to overextend. I feel like that's the biggest thing. People get caught up in a fight, or they get caught up on like closing a kill on someone they got damage on, and this leaves them really exposed to third parties. Basically, I just play in-game this season to put myself in the best situation constantly, not overextend for third parties. A lot of these players that are playing incredibly passive and ratty typically aren't the best fighters, so when it comes down to it, you're probably going to win the game if you're a confident fighter. But it just like, not having to deal with 4 people at once is great. And with how small these zones get, with oftentimes how many people are left alive, they're just waiting on one thing to trigger. And as soon as like they start hearing shotgun shots, everybody in the lobby third parties it. A lot of the end games this season just come down to patience. And I feel like you just kind of want to chill, edge a zone, or maybe some sort of height advantage. If there's like a mountain or a house in zone that's very good, you could try to control that. But I think the biggest thing you want to do is just play to hopefully not get caught off guard by some player hiding in a random location, and play to not get third partied. And if you do that, you'll eventually win the game. It sounds very easy, but in practice, it's a little bit harder. And I also have seen a decent amount of tree campers end game for whatever reason this season. I feel like this season has been very campy end game, and it's not just me that has said this. I read comments about the game often on my YouTube channel, on Twitter, on Twitch when I stream, and pretty much everybody agrees that this season has been very campy. And so look out for players camping on trees end game. I don't know why, but I don't know if it's the way the katana is or the fact that the heavy sniper's back, but I've never ran into like more tree campers in like a smaller period of time than I have in like the first 2 weeks of this season. I also think you never want to stop moving and never let your guard down. Like I was talking about before, like if you're controlling a house or a mountain or whatever, that's great. But you want to just still be kind of moving back and forth, sporadically jumping, maybe sporadically crouching, because the heavy snipers this season are so lethal. It's a one-hit kill. So if you're ever at a point where you're an easy target, or if you're hyper fixated on shooting somebody that's not an imminent threat, you not only leave yourself vulnerable to third parties, but also third-party snipers. So you need to like, I feel like just awareness of what's going on and not getting too tunnel vision on things is very important for endgame this season, and also not getting impatient because of how slow it plays out. For early to mid game, I wouldn't stress this, the storm too much. This is another big change with the zones they made. Zone hits for 1 damage until 5th zone. 5th zone is when it starts hitting for 2 damage a second. And one of the zones they added is very early on in the game. So you don't need to be rushing looting your initial location as much as you did in the past. If you were someone who really avoided landing at edge locations in the past because you were worried about storm, it's not as much of a problem this season. And then also, if you're playing team game modes and someone dies, it's not the end of the world if you have to like revive them in storm or like tank zone in order to revive them, because storm is hitting for such a minuscule amount of damage until 5th zone. 5th zone it starts hitting for 2, but anything before 5th zone is only 1 damage a second, and it's oftentimes easy enough to find heals in storm with things like the fishing spots, the coolers that exist on the map. There's just a lot of heals that exist and the barrels as well. So it's like typically pretty easy to heal in Storm this season. And if you are in a situation where you need to like stay in Storm to maybe get away from a player because you don't want to fight them, or your teammate dies and you want to reboot them, but the only nearby reboot is in Storm, you don't need to stress it as much because they made Storms way less lethal this season with the way they with the way they reworked the zones. But that is going to be it for today's video. Those are some mistakes you're making in Fortnite Chapter 4 that you could be making in Chapter 4 that are Chapter 4 Season 2 that are losing you games. Like I said, there will be videos linked down in the description below of like more general zero build mistakes that you might be making. And if you haven't seen those videos, they're probably pretty helpful, and like a lot of it still is relevant today, whereas like with this video I didn't want to just rehash all of that information. I wanted to focus on specific things for Chapter 4 Season 2. But if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe if you like some more, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.